I'm afraid that punctuality is not what it was, madam.
It seems so, Arthur. Would you bring me another...
Another vodka martini, madam? Certainly.
I'm sorry, I fought with a BMW for a parking meter.
I didn't think you were coming. I was about to leave.
Don't be ridiculous. Of course I was coming. I wanted to leave early, but I couldn't get away. And today of all days, I really am sorry.
Yes, to sit here alone as if I'm not devastated enough.
No, I apologize. The phone kept ringing. I just couldn't get away. Now, tell me everything. How are you?
Shattered. It's been 6 weeks, and I'm still in a state of shock.
I think it was more of a shock to me than it was to you. I didn't know he was ill.
He wasn't ill, dear. He simply expired.
Well, he certainly couldn't have been healthy.
Well, of course, we know that now.
What didn't you suspect? Hadn't you complained of pain, headaches, lack of energy?
As far as lack of energy goes, I would have thought you the better judge.
In that case, I'd say he'd have lasted until 100.
Were you ever unfaithful?
How could I possibly be unfaithful?
Oh, very well, then were you ever intimate with other men?
When?
Oh, when you knew Ian.
I've known him 18 years.
Well, during that time.
The answer is yes. Rarely, but yes.
Did Ian know?
Yes.
You told him outright?
Not outright, no, but he wouldn't have minded.
He would have, you know.
Perhaps, but Ian wouldn't have expected it. In any case, he never asked me. We never discussed it. Not after the first year, anyway. Why do you ask?
I don't know. I suppose I just wanted to tidy up the ends.
Anne, I'm so terribly sorry. I know you have your family, and is there anything I can do?
No.
I think it might have been easier for me if I'd gone to the funeral. I'd like to have said farewell or paid my last respects or whatever it is one does on such occasions.
Oh, it's convention, dear, formality.
Perhaps, but now we're talking about it, I might as well tell you. I felt very cheated at being left out.
Debbie, dear, I didn't think it wise. There might have been questions, and I was in no fit state to answer them. Oh, they were the usual collection of maiden aunts with their sharp noses and inquisitive natures and wagging tongues. Oh, they'd have had a field day with the two of us sobbing over the grave. And how was I to explain you to Eric and Sue? They had no idea their father was unconventional.
There must have been people there from the office, strangers the family didn't know.
Oh, certainly there were, but none of them displayed the grief you might have shown.
Was it a large funeral?
Yes.
Was it a terrible ordeal? Do you mind talking about it?
It was an ordeal.
How did Ian die?
At home. He rose early, as usual. Showered, breakfasted. I heard him pile the dishes in the sink for me. That was his routine. I didn't hear the front door slam. I thought it was uncommonly considerate, but it didn't strike me as being unduly odd. So I turned over and went back to sleep. I found him in the hallway. He was clutching an airmail letter from a cousin in South Africa, a circular from the AA, and a gas bill. Mind you, these days gas bills are enough to give anybody a heart attack.
Was he completely dead, or did he die in the ambulance?
He was completely dead. I wonder if I should sue British Gas.
Oh, I think you're marvelous. You're taking it so well.
One tries. Ah, Arthur! You've forgotten us. The usual here, please.
Certainly, madam.
I think he was becoming absent-minded.
Oh, Arthur. He was absent-minded when he was born.
Not the waiter, Ian. He was becoming absent-minded, forgetful. Didn't you notice?
I wouldn't have said forgetful exactly. He was sometimes vague.
Well, doesn't that amount to the same thing?
I suppose so.
And something else. He was becoming vain.
How?
He was coloring his hair.
Oh, dear.
And another thing, he was always on diets, but of course you knew that.
Oh, yes, but he was hopeless. He used to say, I only have one meal a day. I can't understand why I don't lose weight. I said, yes, it starts at 8 in the morning and it finishes at 8 at night. Did he say anything before he died?
I'm afraid our last words were not very distinguished. We were in bed. It was rather late, and he said he was going to read. So after about 10 minutes, I said, oh, put that bloody light out or take your precious book downstairs. He told me to get stuffed.
Oh, dear.
I had to lie about it, too.
What do you mean?
Well, Eric asked me what his father's last words were, and I told him. He said, "Good night, dear, and sweet dreams."
Did he give any hint about us?
Oh, no, why should he?
I don't know. There was something on his mind. Something was troubling him. He'd become distant.
Ian had absolutely no idea you and I were friends. Not 18 years ago, or 9 years ago, or even in the last weekend of his life. And even if he had guessed, why would he mention it? Did he say anything to you?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Now, you know you've never been able to hide anything from me. What is it?
Just seems to me wrong that he should have died without knowing. I thought that towards the end he might have guessed.
Guessed? Wrong? What do you mean?
Just wrong.
Oh, nonsense. I don't mean to sound cold and calculating, but I would have said that Ian's death provided the perfect end.
I don't see it that way at all. Just seems to me to be terribly sad and wrong. I can't help feeling, well, remorse.
Remorse? Really, Debbie, what an odd notion. Oh, there's too much of the moralist about you. It comes from living in the suburbs.
But we cheated him, Anne, and I felt that towards the end he ought to have known.
It was I who was cheated, dear. Now, don't forget that.
I don't forget. But I'd always hoped there would come a time when the three of us would meet and we could tell Ian the truth.
The truth? What an amazing idea. 3 octogenarians beating their breasts and gumming away about long-ago infidelities. How revolting.
I always hoped it would happen. Now it's gone. I can never explain.
Explain what? It was Ian who owed me an explanation. But what would it have achieved?
I don't know.
Thank you, madam.
And where is my vodka martini?
There is some delay, madam, a technical hitch.
Oh, what nonsense. Well, bring me something else. Bring me one of those.
At once, madam.
I remember how it all started.
So do I.
And it was your idea, your scheme. Let Ian have his fling. You and I must meet and not be enemies. It's obvious, dear. You come from a good family. Well, we didn't become enemies. We became friends.
And good friends. I'm very fond of you, Debbie, very fond. I couldn't love a sister more. In fact, I don't.
And we performed this confidence trick.
But, Debbie, dear, I never began the affair. Until you came along, I was the ever-faithful wife. I was supposed to be the unknowing victim.
Well, you weren't a victim for very long.
But you'd never blamed me before for not being the innocent wife with her Bex, Bissell, and Flash. And once we became civilized, I never accused you of attempting to break up a home.
No, we went to the other extreme. Ian must have thought he was quite the lad, with his attentive family and his adoring wife and me. It was all a game, an act.
But aren't we all involved in an act every day of our lives? Isn't that how we manage to cope?
Anne, it doesn't matter how you twist things. We planned around Ian. We made arrangements and shared jokes at his expense, and we engineered this great conspiracy.
But what was the alternative all those years ago? To bring it out into the open? I thought it was so unusual. But then I learned so many relationships were like ours, all victims of babies and mortgages. But to tear the structure down, all that upheaval, the demolition, it was simpler to stray.
The fact is, we dangled him like a puppet for 18 years.
I was very fond of Ian, of course I was. I suppose when I first met him, I loved him. He was gullible, naive, uncommunicative, and rather moody.
Anne, he was your husband.
Debbie, he was your lover. have the usual here?
I believe Arthur is attending to your order, madam.
Arthur has expired somewhere. The usual here, please.
At once, madam.
He was a decent man. He was good to me, and I didn't have the courage to be honest with him.
Oh, nonsense. Of course you were honest. We both were. We simply omitted to supply him with every detail of every day.
No, it was worse than that.
What do you mean, worse?
Do you remember Hadrian's Wall?
I do.
We took off for the whole week.
So we did. Oh, it was splendid.
I told him I was going on a computer course, and you said you were going to spend the week with your sister.
Yes?
There you are. That's what I mean. We lied.
But it was a week of healthy, active purity. I recall we covered nearly 50 miles. I never looked at another man. I was too tired.
But you weren't where you were supposed to be, and you weren't with the person you were supposed to be with.
Oh, really, Debbie, you're becoming ridiculously perverse. Are you mixing with Jesuits?
It upsets me to think he died without knowing.
But think of it as a blessing. Can you imagine how shocked he'd have been if I'd announced that I'd been firm friends with his mistress for almost as long as he'd been unfaithful? I can't think of anything better designed to give him a heart attack. I speak with the benefit of hindsight, of course.
It's cruel to make fun at his expense.
Debbie, why this sudden attack of conscience? You didn't show signs of having one before.
I had one. As I knew you didn't, I kept quiet.
I can't accept that. We've always been perfectly honest with each other.
Have we?
Haven't we?
I haven't told you every little thing, Anne, in spite of the fact that in your own insidious way, you've tried to worm every detail out of me.
Well, I've done no such thing. Whatever you've confided, you've done of your own free will.
But mutual confidence was supposed to be the basis of our relationship. Well, you've said so often enough. We need each other, you used to say. We must trust one another.
Well, that was my sincere belief.
What woman wants to have an affair with a man whose wife is looking over her shoulder, making comments, passing judgments? I remember the first time I wanted to buy Ian a birthday present. He likes ties, you said. Let's go to Harrods. He hates red, you said, and won't wear loud colors, and so on and on. You virtually ended up choosing the thing yourself.
I admit I helped. But it proved to be one of his all-time favorites.
You're telling me next he wore it the morning he died?
No. As a matter of fact, he was wearing one of my gifts.
You really can be quite a bitch.
Oh, Debbie, dear, if you wanted a man all to yourself to give presents to, you shouldn't have picked one that was already married.
Even married, I wanted Ian.
And you got him, dear, for 18 years.
I got 5% of him at infrequent intervals.
Oh, think yourself fortunate. That still represents a considerable compromise on my part. And now that we are finalizing our account, let me ask you something I have never, with all my insidious ways, asked you before. Why did you settle for so little?
So little?
Yes, I've often wondered. You're a very attractive woman. Why wait all those years for a man who quite obviously isn't going to do justice by you?
I never thought of it as so little, and I wasn't waiting for anything.
Oh, come on now. No relationship lasts without the partners making plans, and if you don't make plans, it goes out of the window. It withers. It dies.
Ours didn't.
Exactly. But after 18 years, what have you got? Nothing.
Was your relationship so much better than mine? After 32 years of marriage, what have you got? Your children live miles away. You're a lonely widow in a 4-bedroom house. Who can guarantee how things will turn out?
Oh, God.
Yes, we talked in the beginning. He would leave you, we would start a new life. One time he talked of going to Australia.
People do, dear. Ever since they stopped those assisted passages.
For a while, I had the insane idea I wanted his child, but that was in the beginning when it all seemed so wonderful and rare.
We've all had that. It's like whooping cough.
Then we drifted into a sort of routine. Ian was very good to me, you know that. When I wanted to leave my flat and finally buy a house and garden of my own, he helped me in all sorts of ways. In fact, he came over for dinner the Wednesday before he died to help me check some estimates for a damp-proof course.
Well, how was he? Did he complain of pains in his chest?
No, he checked the damp patch and the estimates. We had dinner. It was much the same as usual. He kept looking at his watch. I said, "Do you have to leave early?" And he said no, but he didn't want to miss the tennis on television. He watched it for a while and then fell asleep.
Ian. I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. There's something you don't know about me. I think now is the time to tell you.
What is it?
I was married.
What?
Yes, before I met Ian, I was married and divorced twice.
I don't believe you.
It's true.
Twice?
Yes, 2 marriages, both disasters. The first you could blame on youthful inexperience. He couldn't pour the milk on his cornflakes without first checking with his mother. Second one had an oil fetish.
What? Oil on his cornflakes?
Not on his cornflakes, on me.
You're making this up.
He couldn't do it without the ritual, without the oil. The neighbors always knew when we had sex. I smelled like a fish shop.
Well, why have you never told me any of this before?
Ian's never been dead before.
Did Ian know any of this?
He knew I'd been married, and he knew about Robin.
Robin? Oh, my God, Debbie, I can't keep up with you. Not another lover.
Robin is my son from the second marriage. He's 23 now.
A son? 23? It's impossible. Why wasn't I told? But where have you been hiding him?
I haven't been hiding him. He's got a life of his own. He's in the army, a second lieutenant. I told myself I wanted Ian permanently. Truth was, I couldn't cope with a man on a permanent basis, even Ian. It took a long time for me to admit to myself that I was relieved he wasn't free.
Well, of course, you say that now. But I believe if you could have married him, you would have.
You believe what you want to believe.
And if he'd wanted you that badly, he'd have left. I didn't keep him a prisoner.
He was an emotional prisoner.
Oh, goodness, what's that supposed to mean?
Means you played the helpless or adoring wife, whichever suited the occasion. You allowed him a long rope, but you kept a firm hold on the end. When he went out too far, you yanked hard. Because you knew what you should never have known. You were able to present just the right face at just the right time.
Have you ever thought...
I didn't interrupt you.
Have you ever really thought what it was like to be in my position? Those first weeks were devastating. You tore my world apart. And it wasn't until I met you that I realized the competition was one I could cope with, live with. I rationalized. I thought, most men want to, some men do. Their wives don't know. I do. So, I played the game according to the new rules. All things considered, it wasn't a bad marriage. It kept us on our toes.
It kept you on your toes, and he kept you in considerable style. And what was your contribution to it? Nothing. What have you done? You've never worked, you've never had a job, you've never done anything. You are the Duchess of the stockbroker belt, and you don't know what real life is all about.
Speaking of style, dear, it might be said that you did very well out of him yourself.
Yes, he was generous.
Very generous, I know. You saw it was all about to end. All those contributions to your home comforts and the lump sum for the deposit. And those long weekends in Amsterdam?
I trust Madam hasn't been kept waiting.
I have.
This order has been attended to.
Now, just one moment.
Leave them all.
That would be quite inappropriate, madam.
It'll save reordering.
I want to see you in the kitchen. You have been in this hotel for 62 years, too long as well.
Ugh, this is whiskey.
Oh, is this? Oh, well.
Oh, never mind.
Cheers.
Cheers. You mentioned a house and garden.
Yes?
But that's impossible.
Why?
Because you live in a flat, dear, on the 6th floor.
How do you know?
Well, Ian was not good at keeping secrets. He funneled some rather tidy sums out of his business account. And I discovered he was buying a flat.
How did you find out?
I had John employ someone to follow Ian.
Well, you might have had Ian followed and he might have bought a 6th-floor flat, but it wasn't for me.
Oh, don't be difficult, Debbie. We employed a private inquiry agent. Besides, that's what the money was for.
What money?
Oh, for the deposit on the flat, I presume.
Didn't need Ian's money.
Disruption of communication, madam. My apologies.
Is service to be resumed?
At once, madam.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Arthur. Ah. Well, I don't know what your financial situation is, dear, but you now live in a very well-appointed flat.
I live in a house with a lovely big garden. I potter in it at weekends.
Oh, don't be awkward, Debbie. It's a matter of record.
I ought to know where I live.
Nonsense, dear. You've mislaid yourself, and not for the first time. The inquiry agent said it was a woman on her own. So I put two and two together.
What was this business about Holland?
Holland? Who lives there?
You mentioned long weekends in Holland, in Amsterdam. I haven't been in Amsterdam in 6 or 7 years.
But you must have been. Ian went there regularly every 3 or 4 weeks.
Not with me.
Oh, of course it was you. It must have been you.
I know I have a reputation for being disorganized. I always know the name of the country I'm in.
Oh, I'm becoming terribly confused. Who can he have been with? What was he doing?
He did say things in the last few months.
When? What things? What did he say?
Kept dropping hints about leaving, but we'd been through it all before. I didn't take much notice anyway. We never actually discussed it.
You never discussed it? What are you talking about? You were lovers.
Yes, but after 18 years, you can hardly expect us to be intimate.
Then who did he buy the flat for?
So that was it.
Are you saying there was someone else? Do you realize he cheated us? The sod. Oh, why are you laughing?
Because I'm so relieved. And now, thinking about it, thinking of some of the things he said, it's all beginning to come together.
Who was she? Have you any idea?
Does it matter? My guess would be someone in the office, as usual.
Yes, but who? I need to find out.
You will have to rehire your private inquiry agent. But come to think of it, he did mention a woman. He described her once. Dark-haired, short. I think she was in charge of personnel.
He talked about her to you, and you didn't suspect?
No, I didn't.
Did he mention her name?
Sonia, I think. Sonia Holt? Sonia Holmes. Yes, that was it. Or am I thinking of Sherlock?
Oh, the shit. Why have you never mentioned any of this before?
Because you had to know everything. You had to know. And you had to control. And you had to manipulate.
But it was an arrangement.
What arrangement?
That you had him and I was informed.
I don't know what you're getting so excited about. What difference does it make now? My God.
What?
Someone at the office.
What?
Didn't you recognize her?
Oh, who? Where?
At the funeral. She must have been at the funeral. Think.
Well, I'm trying. But describe her again.
I can't describe her. I never met her. My God. She was at the funeral. Of course she was. And I wasn't.
The cow. She must be traced. What nerve? We'll go straight there now.
Where? The cemetery?
Debbie, don't be flippant. Ian's office.
I'd better get back to my office.
Nonsense. This is far more important. Drink up. Frank, the bill.
1 moment, please, madam.
Then next week. We can't wait.
Here, hang on to this. We'll settle up next time. There'll probably be 3 of us.